Welcome to Season 16 of The Trust Show. First, I'm really excited to announce that my brand new book, The Trust Premium, my 20th book, is finally here. It's available now on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle format. This season, I'm going to be doing something I've never done before. I'm going to be reading the book aloud to you, chapter by chapter, word for word, every week. Today, we'll start with the introduction. In the introduction, I'll tell you why I decided to focus on trust and how I got to the Trust Premium. It really comes down to something very simple. Buyers prefer to buy from sellers they trust. Buyers are willing to pay premium when they buy from sellers they trust, and untrusted sellers have to give huge discounts to convince buyers to buy from them rather than from sellers they trust. I'll give you some of the background on the research I conducted for this book and give you an overview of what's in the book and whether this book is for you. So, without further ado, let's dive in right after this. Welcome to The Trust Show. I'm Yoram Solomon, your host, the author of the Book of Trust, and facilitator of the Trust Habits Workshop. My mission is simple. I want to help you form habits that build your trustworthiness, because the answer to this question will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? People buy from people they trust and are even willing to pay more. Does that sound obvious? It should. If you think about it for a minute, I'm sure you will find instances of you deciding to buy based on trust, to some extent. In some cases, more than in others. But in general, this statement is obvious. But let me ask you this. How much more? How much more are you willing to pay when you buy a product or a service from someone you trust instead of someone you don't know? How big a part does trust play in your choosing one salesperson or professional over another? I bet you can't answer these questions with a precise number. And that's precisely why I wrote this book. But I wrote this book not for you as a customer who pays, but for you as a salesperson, a professional, or a service provider who gets paid. What would you say if I told you the following? 1. If they trust you, new customers will choose you over someone they don't know 96.6% of the time. 2. If they trust you, new customers will be willing to pay you 39.4% higher fees for the same service over what they are willing to pay someone they don't know. And 3, if they trust you, your existing customers will only consider switching to a competitor they don't know if that competitor offers them a 28.3% discount. Sounds interesting enough to read more? Before I move on, I should tell you that I didn't make these numbers up. These are the numbers I found in my survey of financial advisor customers. But first, I must give you some background. I chose to focus my research on trust in 2017. It wasn't a clear-cut decision. When I embarked on my doctoral dissertation research, my topic was the organizational culture for creativity. I considered myself creative and decided to dedicate myself to helping others be creative and, moreover, to help organizations create a culture that fosters creativity. My research question was, why are people so much more creative when working in small startup companies than in large mature companies? I spent 2 years, between 2008 and 2010, interviewing people who worked in both environments to find the answer. I could narrow the answer down to the team dynamics and the leader's attitude towards employees. 7 years later, as I looked at my dissertation, I noticed a box in my conceptual framework that I didn't focus on before. There was a single word inside that box: trust. I realized those factors depend on trust, but didn't pursue it further. I peeled the onion only down to the existence of that box, but not deeper. I changed the name of my company to the Innovation Culture Institute LLC, printed business cards, and ordered customized polo shirts with the logo Large-Scale Creativity. I even published my fourth book, Unkill Creativity: How Corporate America Can Out-Innovate the Startups. It wasn't until years later, when I met with a potential customer to help them build a culture of creativity and innovation, that I realized the importance of trust. I met with their Chief Technology Officer and Chief Human Resources Officer and started asking questions about their culture based on the framework that emerged from my research. They reported that leaders were unwilling to give their employees autonomy, which I found critical to employee creativity, a 47.4% correlation in my research. When I asked them why, they explained that leaders don't trust their employees not to abuse that autonomy. They also reported that employees feared taking risks, trying things, and possibly failing. When I asked them why, they explained that employees didn't trust their leaders to accept failures. They were afraid of the consequences of failure imposed by their leaders. Then, when I asked about the employees' willingness to hold constructive disagreements, when you ask the tough questions, suggest stupid ideas, etc., they mainly reported destructive disagreements or, sometimes, the politically correct disagreement. That's when you have the meeting before the meeting after the meeting, just not the meeting during the meeting. Again, I asked why, and the answer was that the level of trust in the company was so low that employees avoided disagreements altogether. There was that word again, trust, and trust. That was when I felt I might have to peel the onion further than I did in my doctoral research. At that time, my seventh book, Culture Starts With You, Not Your Boss, was at the hands of the editors. I decided to add a chapter named Epilogue, Building Trust. This was the first time I wrote about trust per se. It was only a 6-page chapter, and I added it to the manuscript after I received the edited version of the rest of the book from the editor. That chapter never went through the editor. I immediately published the book, so if you read that book, all typos and grammatical errors are probably in those 6 pages. But I did something else. That was the first time I started developing a conceptual and mathematical model for trust. It looked pretty simple in that book. I'm not going to dig into explaining it. One reason is that the model has evolved, and by the time my 13th book, The Book of Trust, now in its 3rd edition, came out, the model was more detailed. Don't laugh. I'm completely serious. But again, I'm not going to explain it here, for one, because it's described in detail in the Book of Trust, but also because you don't need to master the model to understand trust, as I will explain later. This model was developed especially for me and for people who might follow me when researching trust. Every character in those seemingly complex mathematical equations plays a role and relates to something people do to be trusted or to trust someone. In 2018, I decided to research the topic of trust a little more. So I conducted a small survey. It wasn't anything dramatic. I didn't go through an institutional review board, or IRB, and it didn't meet the academic rigor of doctoral research or come anywhere close to it. I asked a simple question. What is the most important quality for you in other people? I asked it about 6 types of people and relationships: your boss, your employees, if you are the boss, your peers, a salesperson or professional trying to sell you something, your government representative, and your spouse. What is the most important quality for you in each one of them? Initially, I asked this as an open-ended question. Based on the answers, I consolidated answers and narrowed them down to the top 5. Then, I asked the questions in a more extensive survey, this time giving only the top 5 options to choose from. I received 363 responses. Without going into detail, you can read about it in the Book of Trust or even the mini Book of Trust, I can tell you that trustworthiness came out as the most important quality. On average, across all 6 relationships, it was chosen as the most important quality by 61.2% of participants. However, trustworthiness was selected as the most important quality the most when I asked about salespeople, service providers, or professionals trying to sell you something. Trustworthiness was chosen as the most important quality in those 77.4% of the time. In second place came your spouse with 77.2% of the time. More than 3 in 4 people said that trustworthiness is the most important quality in someone trying to sell you something. Interesting result, isn't it? I decided to push this further and see if people were willing to put their money where their mouth was. So, I conducted a second, smaller survey. The background for the survey was this. The wording in the blocks here are copied exactly from the original survey, including the grammatical mistakes. You want to remodel your home. After some preliminary research, you narrowed down the list of possible contractors to 2 and invited both of them to your house to give you a quote. Contractor A is the owner of his company. He has been in business for 20 years. He listens carefully to what you need, makes suggestions, and even prevents you from ordering what you don't need, even though he could make more money. He seems to be doing a very thorough job measuring and estimating the work to be done. Contractor B, on the other hand, is represented by a salesperson, not the owner, who appears very motivated to close the deal with you. He spends time telling you how his competitors are bad. He doesn't seem to be listening to you much and appears very arrogant. The price both are asking for is $10,000 for the job, and there are no differences in what they're offering for that money. Which one would you hire to do the job? The options were A, the trustworthy one, B, the not trustworthy one, C, not sure, or D, none of them. You will notice that I didn't explicitly say that contractor A was trustworthy while contractor B was not. Instead, I used the characteristics of a trustworthy salesperson, as I found in my research, to describe one and the opposite to describe the other. After answering the first question, the survey continued with 3 more questions. Okay, your answer to the first question was obvious. You likely chose contractor A. But what if the price that contractor A asked was 10% higher than what contractor B asked for? Contractor A is asking for $11,000, while contractor B is asking for $10,000 for the same project. Which one would you buy from now? Reminder, contractor A appeared much more trustworthy than contractor B. Will you change your answer if the price that contractor A asked was 20% higher than what contractor B asked for? Contractor A is asking for $12,000, while contractor B is asking for $10,000. Which one would you buy from now? Reminder, contractor A appeared much more trustworthy than contractor B. How about 50% higher? $15,000 versus $10,000. I received 55 responses. Not a tremendous response, but it was enough to get a sense of where things stood. When the price was the same, the answer was A in 54 of them, 98%. One response was not sure. The same respondent answered not sure to all 4 situations. Later in this book, I will refer to this number, 98%, as the trust preference. To the second question, when the trustworthy contractor asked for a 10% higher price, 54 participants still answered A. meaning that they would still choose the trustworthy contractor. But when the price was 20% higher, $12,000 versus $10,000, only 32 participants, 58%, chose A, while 33%, were not sure anymore. 4, or 7%, chose the cheaper, less trustworthy alternative, and 1, or 2%, chose none. When the price was 50% higher, 12 participants, 22%, still chose the trustworthy A, 21, 38% were not sure, 8 or 15% chose the cheaper option B, and 14, 25% decided not to do the project under these circumstances. Weighing all the results, I concluded that a trustworthy contractor could raise their prices by 29.6% for the same product or service before the customer considers switching to the cheaper, less trustworthy alternative. That's a pretty powerful statement. It's certainly an incentive to be trustworthy. Later in this book, I will refer to this number, 29.6%, as the trust premium. In my entrepreneurship classes at SMU, my students often insist on pricing their proposed products or services below their competitors' prices, as if the only way to win business is through lower prices. If you share this perspective, I'll tell you that just like you could raise your prices 29.6% if your customers consider you trustworthy before they switch to a competitor they don't know, you would have to discount your prices or fees 22.8% if your customers don't consider you trustworthy compared to a competitor they do. Later in this book, I will refer to this number, the 22.8%, as the no trust discount. I should add that those numbers differ for different customers, industries, and contexts, but that's for later. In 2019, I published the first book in a series, Can I Trust You? It was my 9th book and the first to have the word trust in the title. The book's subtitle was 50 plus 1 Habits That Will Make You a Trustworthy Salesperson. And in 2021, I published the 5th book in the series, 55 plus 1 Habits That Will Make You a Trustworthy Consultant, Advisor, or Coach. But since then, and until 2023, most of my work was focused on building trust in non-sales relationships, primarily within organizations, between leaders and their teams, and within teams. In 2023, I had lunch with a friend and fellow member of the National Speakers Association, Mark Hunter, also known as the Sales Hunter. Over lunch, he told me he didn't know of any research done to quantify the trust premium for salespeople. Coming from Mark, a renowned sales expert for many years, I took those words to heart and started researching. First, I searched for research that was already done before me. As a university professor, I had access to all the research databases, so I looked for articles with the words sales and trust in their titles in academic research journals. Typically, a search with such broad keywords would yield tens of thousands of articles, but to my surprise, this one yielded slightly over 100 articles. Once I eliminated those who referred to the financial instrument of trust, I had barely over 20, with the oldest published in 1916 and the newest in 2008, 15 years ago. I found a couple of articles that provided some qualitative correlation between the characteristics of salespeople and customer trust in them, but not a single article that correlated the level of trust in a salesperson and the probability that a customer will buy from them or the premium the customer will be willing to pay. There is definitely a gap in research. That's when I started conducting more serious research. Who is this book for? I wrote this book for salespeople, service providers, and professionals selling their services or products to paying customers. These could be financial advisors who are paid management fees for the investments they manage, insurance agents who sell insurance policies, even though the agents get a commission from the insurance carrier and not the customers, real estate agents, car salespeople, photographers, professional speakers, consultants, and anyone else who fall into this definition. Throughout this book, I often use the term salespeople, but it doesn't mean that I'm limiting the discussion to salespeople. Although, if you offer something, be it a product or a service, and want to be paid for it, you are a salesperson, whether you like it or not. Or as my friend Todd Cohen, another sales expert, says, we are all in sales. Generally, this book is for you if you believe that if potential customers trust you, they will choose you over someone they don't know, who will be willing to pay you higher prices or fees, and that if your current customers trust you, they will remain loyal to you even if a competitor offers them a lower price for the same service. In other words, if you want to work less, stop making cold calls, get more customers to choose you, have them willing to pay you more than your competitors, stay loyal to you, and recommend you to people who trust them, this book is for you. The research. One day, as I was going through my PhD coursework, I got a call from my academic advisor at the university. He asked me if I needed help registering for the next semester. I was surprised at the question, as I had already registered for courses for the next semester, so I told him that. I saw that, he said, and suggested, I think you should start thinking about your dissertation topic. Again, a little surprised, I told him, I already have a topic for the dissertation. Well, he added, then maybe it's time you should find a mentor and start figuring out your research methodology. In general, there are two main methodologies, typically referred to as quantitative and qualitative. Most PhD students take the quantitative route, which means you send a survey, get at least 200 respondents, run a few statistical analysis procedures, and finalize your results. Piece of cake. Others take the qualitative route, which requires you to observe, interview, and generally peel the onion. My mentor used to refer to the quantitative methodology as confirmatory because you are confirming or rejecting hypotheses, and to the qualitative methodology as exploratory because you are finding things you didn't know before. I ended up including both methodologies in my research. Taken aback, I told my academic advisor that I already have a mentor and have chosen my research methodology. Let me be blunt, the advisor continued. It doesn't seem like you have. You took both qualitative and quantitative research classes for the next semester. You have to choose one. Now I got what he was thinking. Why? I asked him. Well, he was used to students taking only the classes related to the methodology they would use in their dissertation. So I had to explain to him, I'm not going to have a specialization area in my PhD. I won't take leadership, education, or any other specialization. Instead, I want to take every single research class you have. And I did, because I knew that at some point in my professional life, I would want to do more research, and I didn't want to regret not taking any research class. So, I learned how to do qualitative research, quantitative research, develop survey questions, do case studies, focus groups, and every method the university had a class on. And now, this knowledge and experience has come in handy. I can't call my initial survey of trust premium, which yielded the 29.6% number, real research. It was more of a curiosity survey. But when I decided to take trust premium seriously, I needed to conduct some more serious research. To start the research, I began by reading everything that was written and published about the relationships between trust and price. As I mentioned in the book's introduction, I found very little, but not nothing, with the oldest article published in 1916, before the U.S. entered World War I. The prior research I found was too general. Instead of realizing that different industries can have different trust premiums, it focused on the characteristics of the salesperson that would lead to trust. The most significant research was called Buyer's Trust of the Salesperson, an item-level meta-analysis by John Andy Wood, James S. Bowles, Wesley Johnston, and Danny Ballinger, published in the Journal of Personal Selling and Sales Management, Volume 28, Number 3, Summer 2008, pages 263 to 283. There wasn't a single study that attempted to quantify the trust premium or to correlate that premium to any factor. Mark Hunter was right. I was going to be the first. Equipped with the model and the different components of that model, I set out to develop a data collection tool, also known as a survey. I also needed participants, and after interviewing several different survey panel companies, I chose Sentiment, with a C, as my platform and participant panel. Realizing that the parameters would differ for different industries, I conducted separate surveys for various industries. I also conducted specialized surveys to answer specific questions about trust and trust premium. After several dry runs and pilot tests, I conducted the following surveys. In November 2023, I conducted an industry-specific survey of 124 customers of independent insurance agents. In July of 2024, I conducted an industry-specific survey of 107 customers of financial advisors. In July 2024, I also conducted an industry-specific survey of 106 small business owners who use or consider using lawyers or accountants. And in May 2024, I concluded a general public survey of 426 participants on general questions. The industry-specific surveys were modified for the specific industries. For example, a financial advisor survey asked about the fees a financial advisor would charge, whereas an insurance agent survey asked about the policy premiums. Throughout the book, I will include findings from my research where applicable. About this book. This book has 4 parts. The first part explains the theory and research behind the concept of the trust premium. It described how and why trust became the only differentiator, why customers would prefer to buy from you, if they trust you, than from someone else, why they are willing to pay you more, how much more they're willing to pay, as well as the factors that affect that decision. You will find that different industries and contexts command different premiums. The second part explains trust itself. What is trust? How does trust behave? What makes one person trust another? That part covers the 8 laws of trust that I observed over the years, the relative trust model that I developed since starting my trust research, and the foundations for trust and trustworthiness. You will learn that trust is relative and contextual, that the same behavior that would cause one customer to trust you could cause another customer to distrust you, and concepts such as transferable trust. The third part provides a few specific behaviors most relevant to the selling process and the overall relationship between a salesperson and a customer, current or future. This is not a comprehensive list. Hopefully, the book's second part will give you enough to develop such behaviors yourself. More specific behaviors are covered in the book series Can I Trust You for particular relationships and in my Trust Premium Masterclass. However, I found the behaviors covered in the third part of this book to be the most impactful and generic behaviors that will affect your trustworthiness by your customers. Finally, the fourth part provides the process. W. Edwards Deming, considered the father of the quality movement, once said, "If you can't describe what you are doing as a process, you don't know what you are doing." You see, knowing what behaviors you must change is not enough for you to change them. If it were, nobody would be overweight. After all, we all know what we must do to lose weight. I'll give you a hint. You eat less and exercise more. But we don't do it. So, the purpose of the fourth part of this book is to help you form new habits that will change your old behaviors and replace them with behaviors that will increase your trustworthiness in your customers' eyes, cause them to choose to buy from you over your competitors, be willing to pay you more, stay loyal to you, and recommend you to people who trust them. Part 4 of this book covers two processes. The process of determining the trust premium in your industry and the factors that affect it so you will know what to focus on to maximize your trust premium, and the process of identifying the behavior that must change and forming new habits that will change them. I trademarked the latter, trust habits. Before diving in, let me make something clear. I'm not here to convince you that being a trustworthy, ethical, empathetic, no BS salesperson is the right thing to do, though I firmly believe it is. Nor am I trying to reverse the troubling erosion of trust we see in society. My purpose is simpler and more pragmatic. I want to show you how being all those things will make you more successful. The truth is, you can make more money by being honest, empathetic, and trustworthy. This book is for those willing to embrace trustworthiness, not just because it's morally right, but because it works. I did my best to cover those topics from multiple directions. The book includes research findings. Most of the research in this book was done by me, but I included and appropriately referenced and attributed some research done by others. The book also contains stories, personal and otherwise, that often help make specific points. Besides, stories make reading more fun, don't they? Many things you will read here will make sense, even without reading the research, but I provided the research nevertheless. If you're searching for a silver bullet, a definitive list of actions that, if followed to the letter, will make you trusted by every customer, this book is not for you. The truth is, there is no single silver bullet that works in every scenario. As a former military marksman, I can tell you that different objectives require different bullets. There's one best suited for stopping a person, and another for hitting a target behind a wall. Some bullets are ideal for stalling a car by piercing the engine block, while others are tailored for hunting or self-defense. The environment matters too. What works in a dense forest might fail in open plains, and the perfect bullet for a close range is very different than one designed to hit a target over a mile away. A skilled marksman knows how to assess the situation, understand the target, choose the right ammunition, and execute with precision. Trust works the same way. It's both relative and highly contextual. Techniques that succeed spectacularly in one situation can be entirely ineffective in another. This book aims to teach you how trust operates in various selling scenarios, equip you to assess the unique circumstances of your customer and context, and help you choose the best approach. Then, Like a marksman, you'll execute with confidence and precision. Finally, throughout this book, you will learn how dishonesty and low ethical standards leads to a significant erosion of trust, while honesty, integrity, transparency, hard work, personalization, and high ethical standards elevate your customers' trust in you, ultimately increasing your trust preference and trust premium. I will guide you through understanding what makes customers trust you and provide actionable ideas for behaviors you should adopt to earn that trust. However, I must caution you, do not treat these ideas as tricks to mislead customers into thinking they can trust you. Trust cannot be faked for long. If you use these principles to merely give the appearance of trustworthiness while acting otherwise, the truth will inevitably surface and the damage to your reputation will be immense. Instead, I urge you to embrace these behaviors sincerely and authentically. True trust comes from genuinely being trustworthy, and that is the only way to build lasting relationships with your customers. Enjoy the book. This is the end of the introduction chapter. Let me know what you think. I'd love to interact with you over this book. That's it for today. I hope this made you think a little differently about trust and trust premium. May trust be with you. This was the Trust Premium Show. What would you like to know about trust and trustworthiness? Let me know and I'll answer it in a future episode. I would love to hear from you. Email me at yoram@thetrustshow.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to the show so you will automatically get notified when I release a new episode. Rate it. Write a review for this podcast because those ratings help not only you, but also others looking for podcasts just like this. If you're looking for more resources to learn about how to build trust, be trusted, or know who to trust, look up my workshops, online courses, books, or go to my website, trusthabits.com. And remember that the answer to these two questions will have the biggest impact on your personal and professional success or failure. Can I trust you? And can you trust me? Thank you for listening or watching The Trust Show.